Subscribe to the channel and hear even more exciting stories. What started as a simple pose turned into a dangerous gaze. Hey Reddit, throw away for obvious reasons. Call me Cass, 27F. This is a story I never thought I'd write, mostly because it sounds like the kind of thing that only happens to other people, or in those creepy PSA YouTube videos you watch and think, that's messed up, but I'd never be that clueless. Spoiler, we're all that clueless until we're not. So context. I've always been the artsy friend. You know the type, paints on their jeans, way too many thrifted scarves, Polaroids taped all over their apartment. I've also never considered myself especially photogenic, but last spring my coworker/friend Sam, 34M, was building his photography portfolio and asked if I'd model. It's nothing fancy, he said, just some lifestyle shots. You'll get free coffee and the rights to any photos you like. I'd seen his work, quirky, creative, nothing sleazy. Plus, we'd worked together for 2 years. I trusted him. Honestly, I was a little flattered. We scheduled a shoot on a lazy Sunday. Sam picked the location, a sunlit vintage bookstore with a cozy corner for reading and candid portraits. I showed up in my favorite sweater, feeling both awkward and excited. The first half hour was fun. He cracked jokes, adjusted the lighting, gave easy directions. If anything, I felt a little silly striking natural poses, but Sam was patient and encouraging. Looking back, there were maybe a few tiny flags. He kept complimenting my energy. His camera lingered a second too long when I laughed, and he suggested a few close-ups that felt oddly intimate. But I chalked it up to nerves, mine, not his. After all, who gets creeped out by someone they've shared lunch breaks and office gossip with for years? Turns out, I should have trusted my gut. What started as a simple pose was about to turn into something I couldn't laugh off. It happened maybe 45 minutes into the shoot. I'd just finished balancing a stack of old paperbacks on my head for a goofy, candid, don't judge, and Sam suggested we try something more serious and mysterious. He wanted me to sit in the corner window, lights spilling over my face, looking off into the distance. Let your eyes tell a story, he said, his voice suddenly low and intense. I giggled, but the vibe had changed. A subtle shift, like when a sunny day turns cloudy and you don't realize it at first. He started moving in closer, snapping rapid fire. Great, now drop your chin. Perfect. Eyes up, right at me, but softer. The instructions sounded normal enough, but the way he said softer made my skin prickle. I was hyper-aware of the way he was watching me, not just as a subject, but more. Or maybe I was just being self-conscious. I told myself not to overthink it, that Sam was just in the zone as an artist. Then he said, almost under his breath, "Wow, you're really beautiful when you stop trying so hard." The words hung there, weirdly intimate, making the air in the little bookstore corner feel suddenly heavy. I gave a nervous laugh, trying to brush it off, but he didn't smile back. Instead, he held eye contact a beat too long, camera lowered, gaze almost hungry. The whole vibe felt off. I shifted in my seat, wrapped my arms around myself, and joked, "You're making me blush, Sam, geez." I hoped he'd catch the hint and lighten up, but he didn't. He stepped in even closer, suggesting I try a pose like I'm sharing a secret. Look at me, but like I'm the only one in the world who can see you. Suddenly, I felt pinned in place, nerves jangling. Something in the room had changed, and my body noticed before my mind could put it into words. My smile faded. My answers got shorter. Sam noticed, but instead of backing off, he got quieter and more intense, lowering his voice to a near whisper as he snapped shot after shot. That dangerous gaze in the lens? It wasn't just a trick of the light. It was real, and it was aimed right at me. I tried to reset the mood. I cracked a joke about looking like a haunted librarian. Sam gave a thin smile, but his focus never wavered. He kept circling me with his camera, getting closer each time. His instructions shifted from playful to personal. Uncross your arms, let your hair fall forward, tilt your head like you're thinking about someone you miss. Each request felt more invasive than the last, like he wasn't interested in capturing a mood. He wanted to create one. I got that squirmy feeling in my stomach, the kind you ignore because you don't want to seem rude or paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things, that it was just the intensity of a creative shoot. But when Sam adjusted a stray strand of my hair, his fingers brushed my cheek, lingering just a second too long. My whole body tensed. He didn't apologize, just said, "Sorry, I'm a perfectionist." The bookstore owner popped by to check on us, and I felt a flood of relief. For a few minutes, we chatted. The energy snapped back to normal, and I convinced myself I was being dramatic. But as soon as we were alone again, Sam said, "Let's do a few shots in the back, where it's quieter." I hesitated. Something in my gut said don't go, but I didn't want to offend him. He'd always been nice, always professional. I nodded and followed him anyway. In the back room, the light was dim and the air heavy with old paper and dust. Sam asked me to stand close to the window, then started giving directions that felt loaded. Imagine you're waiting for someone who might never come back. Look right at me, like you're searching for something. The camera felt like a spotlight. I stared past him, forcing myself to think of mundane things, laundry, grocery lists, literally anything to keep my face neutral. But Sam seemed to want more. He said quietly, "Let the walls drop. Don't hold back." His tone made my heart race for all the wrong reasons. He was so close I could feel his breath. I stepped away, mumbling that I needed a water break. He tried to joke, "Did I scare you?" But the look in his eyes wasn't joking at all. That's when I knew. This wasn't just an awkward vibe. I was in a situation I needed to get out of fast. Standing in the back room, my heart thudding, I realized I was cornered by more than just bookshelves. I forced myself to be polite, grabbed my bag and stepped out to the main floor, pretending I needed to check a call. My hands shook as I scrolled through my messages, hoping the act looked casual. Sam hovered nearby, eyes sharp, making small talk that sounded forced and way too personal. "You ever think about modeling full-time? You've really got something." He wasn't even pretending it was about art anymore. That's when my gut gave me a wake-up slap. "This isn't about photos, Cass. Get out." I made up a sudden, urgent work email, apologized, and said I needed to cut the session short. Sam's smile faltered. "Already? But we're just getting to the good stuff," he said. "The good stuff" made my stomach churn. "Maybe next time," I mumbled, backing toward the door. He didn't argue, but his face went cold, like I'd failed some unspoken test. I rushed out, the bell above the bookstore door jangling far too loud. On the way home, I tried to rationalize. Maybe I was just reading into things. Maybe Sam's just awkward. But when I got home and checked my phone, I saw a string of DMs from him. Compliments that edged into flirtation, and then a handful of photos he'd edited already, way more intimate than I remembered posing for. The creepiest part? One was a close-up of my face in that back room, looking vulnerable and uncertain. He'd captioned it, "This one's my favorite. There's a story in your eyes." I felt sick. I scrolled further and saw he'd posted a few shots on his portfolio, tagging me, without permission, and adding a caption about capturing raw beauty. Comments from strangers popped up. "Wow, what a gaze. She looks so lost, love this." Suddenly, my discomfort was public property. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just my imagination or social anxiety. Sam had crossed every boundary, and he'd left a digital trail. I wasn't just uncomfortable, I'd been exploited. And everyone could see it, whether I wanted them to or not. My fingers hovered over my phone for hours that night. Anger pulsed under my skin, battling the old reflex to not make a scene. But seeing myself online, all that vulnerability turned into content for Sam's followers. Something snapped. I fired off a message. Direct, shaky but clear. "Take those photos down. I never gave you permission to use them, and I'm uncomfortable with how you handled today's shoot." His reply came almost instantly. "Whoa, Cass, relax. I thought you'd be flattered. The shots are beautiful. You have no idea how many people would kill for this kind of exposure. And you did say you wanted the pictures, remember?" He tacked on a smiley face, as if that would smooth everything over. I felt my hands shaking as I typed back. "I wanted normal portraits, not whatever that was in the back room. You crossed the line. I trusted you, and you took advantage of that." I hit send, heart pounding. His response was defensive, then dismissive. "Sorry you feel that way, but you were into it at first. Don't make this into a bigger deal than it is." That last line made something inside me crystallize. For years, I'd brushed off little moments like this, gaslighting, boundary pushes, jokes that made me squirm. This was different. I took screenshots of his messages and his posts, then commented publicly on his portfolio. I didn't consent to these being shared. Please remove them immediately. Some mutual friends DM'd, asking if I was okay, if the rumors were true. I told them straight. He made me uncomfortable. He posted intimate photos without my okay. Sam doubled down. He sent a final DM, long, rambling, full of backpedaling and veiled threats. If you make a big deal, you'll only embarrass yourself. People love the work. Don't be so dramatic. I blocked him, shaking with adrenaline and anger. The fear was real, but so was the rage. For the first time, I refused to be the chill girl. No more making myself small for someone else's comfort. I realized the real danger wasn't the camera. It was letting myself believe my discomfort didn't matter. The next few days were a mess. I couldn't focus at work. Kept catching myself replaying everything in my head. The shoot, the comments, the way Sam's messages twisted my words. Shock and anger came in waves. I'd be washing dishes or scrolling social media and suddenly feel my chest clench with rage. Sometimes it was pure humiliation. My face was out there, my emotions on display for strangers, because I'd trusted a friend. Then came guilt. I kept wondering if I'd sent mixed signals, if I was overreacting, if maybe it really wasn't as bad as it felt. That's what everyone tells you to think, right? Don't be dramatic. It's just art. Maybe I misread the room. But then I'd see one of those photos, my eyes half wet, my body language closed off, and the guilt would flip back to fury. I knew I hadn't wanted to pose that way. I'd said no a dozen different ways, even if I hadn't shouted it. My instincts screamed at me the whole time, and I'd ignored them because I didn't want to make things awkward. Support came from a few surprising places. Emma, my best friend, was livid on my behalf. You need to report him, Cass. He crossed every line. Even my mom, after the initial wave of why didn't you just say no settled, offered to help me contact the bookstore or Sam's photography network. Mutual friends sent messages, some awkward, some supportive, a few defending Sam. Maybe he just got too into the moment, which hurt more than I'd expected. Nights were the worst. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed replaying every minute of that session, hating myself for not walking out sooner, for being polite, for freezing instead of fighting. But by the end of that week, the guilt started giving way to something steadier, a cold, determined sense that I'd done nothing wrong. I deserved to feel safe in front of a camera, to trust a friend without having to defend myself afterward. I knew it was time to take real action, even if my voice still shook. Because if I let this slide, I'd never trust my own boundaries again. By the end of that endless week, my fear had curdled into resolve. I stopped asking myself if I was being too sensitive. I started asking, what would I tell a friend to do? The answer was always the same. Protect yourself, speak up, don't let someone else's selfishness become your shame. The first thing I did was formally report Sam to our HR department at work. It wasn't easy. Our manager seemed embarrassed, kept repeating he's always been professional before, but I showed them the messages, the screenshots, the portfolio posts. They promised to look into it and to take it seriously. I could tell some part of them wanted this to just go away quietly, but I insisted. I didn't want Sam around me, and I didn't want him targeting anyone else. I reached out to the bookstore owner, explained the situation, and asked them not to let Sam use the space for shoots anymore. She was horrified, apologized profusely, and even offered to post a warning in the employee group chat. That felt like a tiny win, a real, concrete boundary drawn in the world. Then, I wrote Sam one final, brief email. You do not have my consent to use or share any photos of me. Remove them all from your portfolio and socials, or I'll take further action. I CC'd my manager and included screenshots of the request. His reply was curt, almost mocking. You really want to nuke our friendship over some pictures? I didn't answer. I saved everything. For the next few days, I braced for backlash. Some mutual friends drifted away, maybe thinking I was overreacting or ruining his career. But Emma and a few others stood by me, helped me block and report the photos, reassured me when I second-guessed myself, even offered to go with me if I wanted to file a police report. Bit by bit, my world felt safer. The posts came down, Sam kept his distance, and the worst of the whispering faded. There were nights I still felt sick and shaky, but I was done apologizing for protecting myself. For the first time, I was the one drawing the line, and meaning it. Even after the photos came down and Sam was reminded about workplace conduct, The echo of what happened followed me everywhere. Work was awkward for weeks. Some coworkers gave me sympathetic nods, others kept their heads down, and a couple looked at me like I'd just made everyone's life harder. Our friend group quietly fractured. A few people DM'd their support but said nothing in public. Some simply stopped talking to me, as if my boundaries were contagious. But Emma stayed, and so did a couple of friends who matter more than I ever realized. They didn't just validate my feelings, they made space for them. They invited me out, let me vent, and, maybe most importantly, never once suggested I was too sensitive. I clung to those people like lifelines. Meanwhile, Sam's online portfolio lost a bit of shine. I heard through the grapevine that a few models and clients had quietly dropped him after my comments and the bookstore warning. I never wanted to ruin anyone, but I refused to let him paint me as a problem for expecting basic respect. There was a hollow satisfaction in seeing some consequences finally reach him, though it didn't erase what he'd done. The hardest part was dealing with my own shame. I replayed conversations, relived moments, worried that people saw me as difficult, dramatic, or, worst of all, a victim. But with every week that passed, the guilt shrank. I realized that standing up for myself might have cost me a few shallow friendships, but it revealed who was actually worth keeping. My relationship with Emma grew deeper. My own confidence, rattled at first, began to steady. Therapy helped. So did journaling. I started saying no more easily in other parts of my life, at work, with family, even in little things like returning an overpriced coffee. That dangerous gaze Sam gave me became a lesson. Trust the warnings your gut gives, and never let anyone make you feel small for drawing a line. In the end, I didn't get justice in the viral, movie-ending sense. But I got something quieter and just as valuable. My own peace, my voice, and a handful of people who never needed convincing that I mattered. And for now, that's enough. The months after that photography session changed me in ways I'm only starting to understand. I became hyper-aware of my own boundaries, both with new people and old friends. If someone's energy felt off, even a little, I paid attention instead of writing it off. My therapist called it recalibrating my compass. That's exactly what it felt like. I started asking myself, does this situation make me feel safe? Am I allowed to say no here? For the first time, I realized how often I'd ignored my own instincts just to avoid being difficult. I saw all the moments, big and small, when I'd shrugged off a bad vibe, or let someone talk me into being more agreeable, more cool, less honest about my feelings. With Sam, those choices added up to a trap I hadn't seen until it snapped shut. There were days I missed the old ease, saying yes without overthinking, trusting coworkers without a flicker of worry. But more often, I felt proud. I'd stood up for myself, even when my voice shook, even when it meant losing friends or dealing with ugly rumors. I learned that protecting myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. Looking back, I saw the ripple effect of my decision. Emma became more outspoken about her own boundaries at work. My sister, after hearing what happened, called off a date with a guy who wouldn't take no for an answer. Little by little, I watched people around me feel braver about defending themselves, and that felt like a victory. I realized, too, that healing wasn't about pretending nothing happened. It was about owning my story, even the messy parts. I let myself grieve the old friendship with Sam, but I stopped blaming myself for his choices. I forgave myself for not being chill. I began to see that what happened wasn't the end of my story. It was the middle, the messy part where you figure out who you are and what you'll never allow again. Now, when I look back at those photos, I don't just see a woman caught in a dangerous gaze. I see someone learning to trust her own. Now, months after that strange, unsettling photo shoot, I can finally see how much my life has changed for the better. Not because of the pain itself, but because of what came after. The unlearning, the rebuilding, and, most importantly, the trusting of myself. If you'd asked me before all this, I would have said I was good at setting boundaries, that I could spot a red flag a mile away. Turns out, most of us think that, until someone we know, someone we trust, crosses a line we didn't even know was there. I lost a friend, but I gained a deeper understanding of what real friendship and respect actually look like. I learned that it's better to walk away alone than to stay and let yourself be diminished. I learned that standing up for myself doesn't make me dramatic. It makes me a person who values her own safety and truth. So, if you're reading this and something about your own situation feels eerily familiar, listen to that feeling. You are not being crazy or overdramatic. You are being wise. Your comfort is reason enough to say no. The story doesn't have to end with you as the victim. It can be the moment you take your power back. Thank you, Reddit, for letting me tell my story. If you're ever caught in a dangerous gaze, I hope you remember, you deserve to be seen, respected, and, above all, safe.